It's another episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. But before we get into it, are you subscribed? If not, please make sure to subscribe, like and share the video and spread the word. Because the Christian Reeve podcast is here to stay. I love doing this and I love all of you that support me. So thank you. And yeah, let's get into this podcast, shall we? Boom! Hello and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve podcast. Today's guest is a podcaster, YouTuber, Twitch streamer, video editor and redditor all the way from South Africa. He goes by the pseudonym TheNoob950, otherwise known as Brendan Peterson. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Always a pleasure to have a fellow podcaster on. There's much we can talk about with that. And that's what we're going to do. Let's jump straight into that. You are a co-host of the Total Chaos podcast. Great name. What's the podcast about and why did you decide to start it?
Well, I can tell you the origin story, basically. Me and two of my friends that I met very early on in my first year of university, we would have these discussions that would make us crack up a lot. We always made a joke, hey, we should record ourselves and post this online because it has a lot of entertainment value. And one day I just went and sat down and like, hey, how do you start a podcast? What does it cost and stuff? And I've been wanting to buy some upgrades to my computer, including a better microphone because my headset microphone sounds kind of trash. And I thought, okay, let's kill two birds with one stone. I pitched the idea to them, and we kind of just settled on that name. I can't remember which one of the three of us recommended it, but at the moment one of us said it, we knew, yeah, that's the name because it just fit with our brand, and yeah, that's how we started. And the first few episodes were absolute garbage. I'll be the first to admit that, but eventually we fell into a groove. We got used to it, especially when we stopped all recording in the same room. Because with the coronavirus we all had to spread out, and I think that helps help the vibe a little bit. That we don't, because if we said we were all sitting on the same couch originally in my apartment, looking at my computer. And we couldn't face each other when we were talking to each other because then we wouldn't be talking to the microphone. So I think that kind of hindered us a little bit. But, after like episode 10, we really picked up stream. And hey, in 2 days, it's our 1 year. We hit the 1 year mark of our podcast.
Congratulations. That's a very interesting point that you make, because most people would say the complete opposite and would say that it's actually more restricting to have like a Zoom podcast or something like that. Like me personally, obviously one day I want to have my own studio and the works and whatnot, but I'm very happy operating the podcast in the way that I am right now. But yeah, no, I mean, that totally makes sense. I guess for you guys, future considerations is to get like just a round table or something so you can physically be in the room together and see each other and face the microphone. That's like the ideal scenario, right?
Yeah, no, eventually, I don't know, because we have plans to possibly, because I mean, we're friends all studying in the same field. So we're most likely going to get the job in the same field, maybe even in the same place. So we all have plans to move to a different country together because South Africa sucks, and just for like the first year or two, because it will all be strangers in a strange land. So
Yeah.
for a year to live together, help cover rent, and I mean we'll still maybe do the podcast then, depending on how life turns out. But I still think we'll just record from each individual rooms. It's I've never really, and I understand that some people want that, but I've never really been one for a huge, intricate setup with like the studio and the lighting and everything. Like, the entire, I mean, look at the name has the word chaos in it. Like, it's just chill vibes, and just sitting talking about what I never explained what it was about. It's just the three of us get together once a week. Sometimes we have a guest over, and we just talk about whatever happened the week, whatever stories we have to tell, whatever we want to talk about. Mostly geared towards comedy, but we do touch on some serious things here and there.
And what would you say are sort of like the favorite topics to talk about, or the favorite things that you've discussed so far?
It's going to reflect badly on us, but porn comes up a lot, but that's not on purpose. It's not on purpose. I swear it always flows naturally and just somehow gets there. I mean, one of my favorite episode titles, and we always try to, how we title our episodes is we just take like the different things that we talked about and just grab a little bit from each thing to And one of my favorite titles is The Disney Porn Conspiracy. Now, it isn't strictly about a pornography conspiracy within Disney. It's just we talked about Disney, we talked about conspiracies, and we talked about pornography, and that's where it came from. Also, we have Wikipedia is gay hentai, I think is one of them.
What?
I can't.
Oh my god!
I can't remember the exact title, but yeah. Again, it's just the things that were strung together that. And I mean, we never lie in our titles. It's always there will always be some relevance to what is there. But yeah, we usually just talk about whatever comes up. Especially if something big happened in the week, then we'll discuss it. Like when Reddit decided to just crash the stock market, that was something we had some fun with.
Oh man, you got to book me for your show because I just want to sit there and talk shit with you guys. This sounds like a lot of fun.
You are more than welcome to come on.
I'm totally forgotten. I'm already booked on your show. I do apologize.
Yeah.
I tell you what. No, on the topic of podcasts, this is what happens. Like, I shit you not. Like, I am one of the most prepared people ever. I have all my notes here. I've got a calendar that I write, like a physical calendar that I write in all my guests in, plus on the phone, plus everything else. But like with that, everything that's concerned with the podcast and then YouTube and then everything else that I'm doing, it's too much to keep up with sometimes. And I make these mistakes and I feel bad, but I'm like, do you know what I mean?
The trick that I have is I don't try to keep up with it. Like, I'll be honest with you. But if it weren't for, well, I set an alarm on my phone, so I would have remembered. But until you messaged me, I was I completely forgot that I was supposed to do a podcast today. Like when you messaged me, I was like 3/3 of the way through watching the new episode of WandaVision, and
as the episode 6 dropped.
Yeah, episode 6 it dropped like a few hours ago. It's a good episode, and
don't tell me anything. No spoilers.
I'm not telling anything. I'm just saying. It's a good episode.
Every episode has been. I think the way they've done that series is genius.
And the way they built up to it, like the first 3 episodes just being kind of a sitcom, and then getting deeper into it with more intricate stuff.
But I love it. It's like 2 different things going on at once. You've got the actual story, and then you've got this kind of like, I don't know. I guess you could call it like a parody style thing where they're kind of like trying to do different sitcoms from different decades and all that, and I just think that's really cool. And for like younger generations who might not appreciate like why that's interesting or cool, it's pretty cool, and it reintroduces it. Like I remember growing up as a kid in the 90s and 2000s, you would actually see reruns of stuff from like the 60s, and it seemed like a different world almost, and it is a different world, but it's a pretty cool sort of time capsule that you can forever, peer into a different age and understand like how things were, how people were, how society was. That's pretty cool.
I have a younger brother, and he's 13 in like 2 months, and he once asked me, hey, like he didn't get that black and white was just once how movies and television was. Yeah. He thought it was always just stylistic, He didn't get that back a while back. That was just how it was, You didn't get like full color was insane when it first happened.
Yeah, it is a pretty mind-blowing thing because like, and like it kind of distorts our idea of the past as well. Like for instance, I've seen a lot of photos that have been edited recently where it's like colorization, where you take a photo from like the 1800s or something, you colorize it, and it looks amazing. It looks like it could have been taken yesterday, and it kind of messes with our head because when you see a photo like that, it's like, oh, this is from a different time so many years ago. It's like you can't relate to it almost. There's like a kind of a barrier between this time right now and that time back then. But then when they do these things, like they edit it with today's technology or colorize it or whatever, it kind of, pardon my language, like fucks with your head a little bit because it's like, hang on, so this is almost like it was taken today, like it was made today, but it can't because I know that this is the past. How is this possible? And it's like, I saw a video on this actually. There's a guy on YouTube called Vsauce who is an amazing...
I love Vsauce.
Right, yeah. I discovered him recently because I remember seeing him in like memes or something. And then I finally watched his content and I was like, oh my God, I love this guy. Totally up my street. I highly recommend you guys go check him out if you haven't heard of him. But yeah, he talks about these sorts of topics at length. and he discussed this topic, and I was like, yeah, that's so true. Like, I don't understand that, like how it messes with your head so much and our understanding of time.
People also seem to think of history as very disjointed, but like something that I like bringing up is Martin Luther King and Anne Frank were born in the same year. Like just for that, like people see the pyramids of Giza and woolly mammoths coexisted for a good amount of time. Cleopatra is closer to today than she is to the construction of the pyramids.
Wow.
Like I think it was Cleopatra. I'm pretty sure it was Cleopatra. I might be getting my pharaohs mixed up, but people seem to think of history as such a mixed bag. I mean, almost everything. Now, if you're religious or not, everything that happened or allegedly happened in the New Testament, in the entirety of the Bible, is no more than 6,000 years ago. If you trace it back, like a bit more than 6,000 years ago. Like people seem to think of history as such a disjointed thing. Like World War II happened, then segregation happened, then no, it's all kind of just happening together in a mixed bundle.
But even just our feelings about time, like for me, okay, I'm a 27-year-old man. I turned 28 this year in May, right? And so I was born in 1993. And for me, I know it's that kind of joke of like, you get to a certain age and like, oh, that feels like it was 5 minutes ago. But for real, like the 90s feels like it wasn't that long ago for me. Like I feel like, because we're in 2021, but like the mid 2000s feels like, oh, that was 5 or 10 years ago. But it was actually like 20 years ago. When you look at it, like early 2000s and stuff, it's just like, what?
I am now the exact same distance. Like I remember the last 10 years of my life. I turned 21 this year.
Okay.
I remember the last 10 years of my life, and it blows my mind that I'm closer to being 30 than I am to being 10. I don't enjoy that realization all too much. But because, and another thing is, kids these days, and I hate saying that because it makes me feel old, but they don't. It's just how differently they grew up. Like when I was young, it was SpongeBob, Tom and Jerry, and stuff like that. And you went outside to have fun, and and I mean South Africa is like a few years behind the technological curve, or at least it was back then. So we were just. I remember I got the PlayStation 2 Slim in 2006 or 2007. That was my first video game console, and that blew my mind. Like that was insane. And now kids just have Fortnite, they just take these. They have phones, they take it for granted. I remember my first phone. It was one of those old Nokia phones with the green and black screens. That phone had two purposes: call my mom, play Snake. That was it. That was what that phone was built for. And I'm pretty sure if I could find that phone, I think it was lost through the ages now, but if I could find that phone, I'm pretty sure it would still work.
Dude,
because those things were built to last.
It was the same, for me. I was 10 years old. This would have been early 2000s, very, very early 2000s. And first phone, Nokia 3410. And like you said, like it was a really funny experience because I think I got it at like Christmas or something. And I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, a phone. I have my own phone. And I was like going through it. And, obviously like there's all the numbers in there and then there's the Snake game. But then the sudden realization that, hold on, this is all I can do with it. I can call my mum and my nan, or I can play Snake, and that's all my phone is. And then the novelty sort of wore off within like a couple of days. And I was like, oh, okay, this is just a thing now, which sounds really harsh. But you have to understand that like phones back then were just not what they are now. Like I would say that phones didn't become sort of properly interesting until probably the first iPhone came out, to be honest, because before that, like flip phone, stuff like that, like people look back and it's like, oh, that's novelty and stuff. And I think the biggest thing that you could really do prior to smartphones was like playing music on your phone. That was kind of the biggest thing, because we had to carry around like, I went through everything, like Walkman CD players, MP3 players, eventually like iPod Nano, iPod Classic, all of that stuff. And then eventually, yeah, being able to get songs on the phone. And back then, you could barely fit anything on there. You'd be lucky to fit like 10 or 15 songs on your phone.
Yeah.
And then obviously the advent of smartphones came, and they got better and better. And now, you don't even have to store stuff on there. You can just use your mobile data, listen to endless songs on, say, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever. And the game's totally changed. And bringing it back to what you said before about, sort of kids taking it for granted, like, I don't really know how else you could take it, because you always kind of deal with the stuff that's given to you. Do you know what I mean? So, like,
Yeah.
I know that you and myself can look back and remember, like, oh, this is what the world was like sort of before the internet really took a hold of things, and before, smartphones, before this, before that. And it's a pretty amazing outlook to have, because I would consider myself as someone who is in part with almost in two worlds. I remember life before then, and I also remember growing up with this stuff. Like, it was pretty exciting being a teenager and having this, stuff coming out year on year and things getting better and better. Like, I remember that satisfying feeling of not having to carry around a phone and an iPod anymore, and I could just put everything on my phone. Like, that was actually relief for me, because it was less stuff to potentially get robbed and also ease of use. Like, it was just better,
Yeah, I think the next big thing is probably going to be virtual reality. And I remember the first Oculus Rift development kits, like the very first proper VR headsets went out. They were so clunky and the resolution was off. I never tested one of them, but I saw like videos, and it was awful resolution, just terrible. And look where we are now, standalone, where you can just put it on wherever you go with the Oculus Quest. It's insane. And with quantum computing, when I remember when I was young, when people talk about quantum computers, it was just sci-fi. It wasn't a thing that people realistically thought was possible, and now we're building them.
My prediction is a combination of what we already have and the technology that they have in the movie Minority Report. So obviously we have smartwatches right now, but they're very limited in terms of, like, what they can do. You can have a bit of apps, you can play music on it, but it's quite limited as to what you can do. But it's essentially like having a mini phone on your wrist. But what I predict is that we're going to have sort of like an AR slash like how do I put it, hologram sort of thing, where you can basically throw what's on your watch onto like a screen in front of you, or maybe onto a wall or something like that. Basically a projection, and then you can interact with the projection. That's what's going to happen. I just don't know like how long it would take for that to happen realistically.
How I see it is, it's going to be similar, but I think it's going to be more us changing, like implants, things like that. I mean, the best example I can think of is a better version of the Google Glass, one that doesn't look that ridiculous. And I mean, if everybody was wearing one of those, then you wouldn't need screens, because the glasses could just project something at any angle, and you could share it with the people around you. And, if it had good motion tracking, which I know it's still far off in the future, but, it's stuff like that. And of course, artificial intelligence is going to make its way and, do some stuff, which
absolutely
scary.
Yeah, it scares the shit out of me, man. Like, when I hear about that stuff, like Elon Musk is proposing, I'm like, I'm not taking any implants. You can try to sell me that in any way you want. I'm not putting anything in my body. Fuck that shit. Like, I'm sorry, that's too far.
The implant, and it curse away. I don't care. It's not the implants themselves that I'm afraid of. It's what people will do with them, because there's like an implant they're talking about that can play music directly into your brain, right?
Yeah, that can be used as a torture device.
That thing has to be wireless. They can't put a plug into your brain. So hack into it, Rick Astley 24/7. Never stops.
Endless Rickroll in your head, like, no, get it out of my head, please.
And it's not like you can, dig out your eardrums to make it stop. It's playing into your brain. It will never stop, which... And as
never gonna end, never gonna end, never gonna end, never gonna end.
I mean, I'm in IT, which I mean, that's my field, so I might be a bit more paranoid than most, but especially as soon as AI is cracked, and people don't realize these things will feed off of each other, because an AI is only as powerful as the computer that runs it. That's how fast it can think. But when quantum computers are broken, then the speed limits on computers just get broken wide open. Which means if you run an AI on a quantum computer, it thinks. And I mean, already on a normal computer, it'll think much faster than humans can. So if you give it access to quantum computing power, it will think even faster, and it will outpace us in an instant. And people always say, "Oh, just tell the computer that it's not allowed to harm humans. It needs to look out for the best of humans." But eventually, the outcome that's in the movies isn't that impossible. Of, hey, the only way to protect humans is to put them in cages because they are always a danger to themselves. I mean, we jump out of planes, for fuck's sakes. How can the computer not see that? Because the computer won't be able to understand, oh, it's for excitement. A computer can't get bored, so it can't understand why we do exciting things. So don't you say, oh, they're putting themselves in danger. Let's stop them from doing that so they can't die. And
okay, let's talk hypotheticals since you're in that field. Do you think we're headed for a sort of Terminator style situation where we're fighting AI, fighting our own creation, or do you think it'll be more like, I don't know, let's say what's that movie that Will Smith was in the early 2000s? I, Robot, stuff like that, where we're sort of living side by side with AI, because there's a lot of interesting things to discuss here. Like, for example, servitude, like this idea that like robots, androids, whatever would be essentially like slaves to humans. Should androids, cyborgs, whatever, robots, should they have their own rights just as humans? Like, should they just be slaves to us? Like, there's a lot of considerations here, and I'm just interested in your thoughts on that, and like, where do you think it's realistically headed? Like, obviously we discussed a couple of like not funny scenarios, but like extreme scenarios there, but where do you think it's actually headed based on what's happening right now?
I think the best example that I can think of is I don't know how much you're into video games, but the game Detroit Become Human, which is probably one of the best games that has been made in recent history. If anyone hasn't, go play it. It is fantastic, and it really gives a good look into this. And that's where the Turing test and something similar to the Turing test will come in, because you can. And I mean, of course, people will tell you, hey, listen, you can torture your robot. That's not okay, because the robots will most likely look humanoid, at least vaguely human, like they do in iRobot. I don't think Terminator is what will happen, because if it happens, we won't win. There is no way we can win against an AI that controls every single factory and every single process on Earth. We'll lose in a heartbeat. But in the more iRobots or Detroit Become Human scenario, you need to think, do these robots can they feel pain? That's the biggest thing. And can they think like a human does? Can they reason? Instead of just thinking logically, can they? One of the best examples of a pseudo-Turing test is, will the computer willingly, without being told, hey, listen, taking the risk might lead to reward, will it be able to think for itself, hey, this is a risky thing to do, but it has a big payoff and it might be worth it, even with the risks involved? Like, I can't. Okay, the best example I can think of, which is kind of stupid, but it's like gambling on the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get a very drastic one, right? Jumping out of a plane with a parachute to catch someone else. That's very risky, because what if your parachute fails? What if you can't catch them? But a human, well, I like to think that I'd make that decision. I mean, I haven't been put in that scenario, so I don't know. But I like to think that if I see, hey, someone's falling out of a plane, I have a parachute, let's jump after them and see if I can help. But will a robot think, okay, listen, that human is most likely going to die now, so I'm not going to jump? Or will it take the risk?
Another interesting thing that, okay, I'm going to lower the tone a little bit, but I think it's still worth exploring, because it's a fair kind of thing, is, there's a lot of humans that enjoy sort of physical pain for sexual pleasure, and that can be anything from sort of things like bondage and BDSM and such stuff like that, to simple things like choking and stuff like that. Would a robot be able to recognize that kind of stuff in terms of, humans interacting with each other, or even, humans interacting with robots. Do you know what I mean? Like, how would they know the limit, where to go? Is this too far? Is this actually violence? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's an interesting.
No, I know, because it's something that we've discussed on our podcast. Is the first person to make a fully automated sex robot is going to be an instant billionaire.
Of course.
Because there are more than enough either curious or lonely people who would buy. And I'm not talking about just one that can move. I'm talking about one that can speak and respond.
Yes.
And
right.
But that's where probably, okay, I'm going to tackle this from a programmer's perspective. That's where the concept of a safe word would be absolutely crucial. You would tell the robot, hey, anything goes until I say this word. If I say this word, stop. And that's now assuming that they want the robot to hurt them. If it's the other way around, I think it will get very dark very quickly, because it's a robot. So there isn't really a point where you have to stop where someone's life would normally be in danger.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that there would be some... It's a weird thing when you think about the robot being the submissive one in that regard, because how does the robot recognize, hey, listen, this needs to stop, I'm in danger? Because if we follow Asimov's laws of robotics, they need to always obey humans. So if the robot says, hey, listen, I'm going to break you apart piece by piece, you're not allowed to fight back, the robot can't really, because the robot, one of the laws is you can't hurt humans. So if it's not allowed to fight back, what's it to do? And it gets really dark, because it reveals like a person that does that to a robot that looks human, that's not a person that's probably right in the head.
This kind of brings in this idea of, like, rules and rights for robots. Now, I know that sounds like a crazy thing to think about now, but like, you made a really good point in terms of, like, okay, the robot would have preservation installed within it, like, to protect itself against danger, against certain things, just as a human being would do. If someone's fighting you, you fight back. You don't sit and just take it, do you? And it's the same, I would imagine, with a robot. It would be programmed to understand that it needs to do that to protect itself. So then that brings in this whole massive kind of group of considerations, like, should they have rights? Should they be able to say no? Consent, that's a big part of this. Should a robot be able to say yes or no? Where does that end?
Something that people need to think about, because and I know this is a bit different, but people say, oh, a robot's having right, that's crazy. Well, about 100 years or so, well, less than 100 years or so, the people saying, hey, women and people of color rights, that's crazy. No, it's something that this is a discussion that's going to need to be had as machines and as AI progresses, because it's not impossible to imagine, and oh, there goes my alarm. It's not impossible to imagine an AI that can feel, that has emotion. I mean, for all intents and purposes, if you look, and this is a bad example, but if you look at your Sims in the game, I mean, they at least have simulated emotions. Mm-hmm. I mean, and we've come so far with technology. I mean, we have chatbots that at least vaguely seem human, and they learn. And it's only a matter of time when we start building AI that improves upon itself and learns from people and starts learning the difference between right and wrong. It's only a matter of time until we have one that feels. And as soon as that barrier breaks, we have problems, because how do you handle a robot that feels? Can you turn her off or him off? What do you call it, her or him, it? What is so many things that need to be talked about. And that's why I think Detroit Become Human is such a great game, because it handles it all. And through the player interaction, you see how things would play out in different scenarios. Like, because you have three main characters is, Connor, which is a police robot. So his job is upholding the peace. So if he defects, that's going against his prime directive of, upholding the law, making sure crime doesn't happen. You have the Kara, who is a victim of abuse. Even though she's a robot, it still happens, and she defects to protect a girl. And there's another one. let's say you see, it's a household robot, and she sees a father abusing his child.
Right. Yeah.
Is hurting the father acceptable in the end to protect the child? Because of course you should protect the kid, but how far can you push that? Can you kill the father if it means protecting the child? Like, because like if I was there, if it was the only way, yes, kill the father to protect the child, because the father isn't. I mean, yes, try everything else, but if that is the only way, then that's what needs to be done. You can't just let the child suffer. But how do you let a robot know, listen, this is the right thing to do? And does a robot feel guilt? What if the robot doesn't feel remorse and goes on a killing spree?
You know, the thing that interests me the most is that these things haven't fully been ironed out, discussed, and finalized yet. Because look, you know, we have in abundance of probably like 50 years worth of media in terms of films, movies, audio, dramas, whatever, that explore these themes in terms of science fiction and eventualities. This is what could happen. This is the worst of what could happen. This is the best of what could happen. You know, so much out there. And a lot of those movies, games, you know, they all deal with these themes. They all sort of say like, hey, you know, it's important that we establish this. It's important that we establish that. You know, we need to establish rights. We need to be wary of this, be wary of that. Like, I don't think, okay, how can I put this? It's clear that this is going to happen. It's just a matter of time at this point. And I think it makes sense to sort of like figure this out now before we get to a point where, like, you know, we don't have time to figure it out and we just have time to react. Because I feel like that's always the worst thing that you can do in life, is just like react on the moment that something is happening in a sort of a knee-jerk reaction. As opposed
I need to warn you that there's a train about to pass by my house and it's going to be loud. Because for some reason my apartment... you're probably... Yeah, it comes.
It's fine, man. No worries, man. We can... It's not even that bad. No, actually, that kind of leads me on to my next thing. Damn.
Yeah, no, it passes. Like, I can... if I throw a stone out my window, I can hit the train.
Wow. How do you deal with that? How do you like cope with that every single day?
I live with the pain, to use it in a phrase. I mean, what else can I do? We didn't know when we got this place. No one told us, and we couldn't. You know, we lived a few hundred miles away. We couldn't scout out this apartment. All the ratings were good. Everyone said, "Hey, yeah, this is a nice place." We got here, train tracks.
That's why it was cheaper.
It passes by like 3 or 4 times a day.
That's not too bad, actually. I would have thought it'd be more.
But here's the thing. It passes by at like 5 a.m. And listen, I know a lot of people say, oh, you need to wake up at 5 a.m. to be productive. Fuck you, I wake up at 10. Like, I go to sleep at like 2 or 3 a.m. So people can't be mad at me. I still only get 8 hours of sleep. My workday is just shifted onwards. So that thing wakes me up in the middle of my sleep. And I'm not, and it's real nice. I'm not gonna get salty over it. You know, this is the bed I made. I must lie in it.
Let's talk about South Africa for a bit, because I feel like there's a lot of stuff we could talk about.
Go ahead.
One thing that I want to bring up is the internet situation in South Africa. Now, you're not the first guest that I've had that's kind of discussed this from South Africa. Sorry. And I had a similar problem when, shout out to Buckmeister Cole, when we were doing our podcast together, because he constantly has connection issues when he's out there. And he explained that it's just normality. It's just part of living in South Africa. And that's actually something that you said to me in our messages prior to this podcast as well. And you said that like sometimes people deliberately sabotage the internet and destroy the physically destroy the internet cables on purpose. And I sort of said to you, well, is this politically motivated? And you said, no, it's just people fucking around. And I just couldn't understand why people would do that. Like, the internet is such an important tool for all of us to our daily lives at this point. Like, why would you sabotage that for yourself? I don't understand that.
I just want to ask you, just for context, what's your internet speed? Like,
I mean, I don't know the speed, but I would say that it's very good here in the UK, very stable. Like, you once in a blue moon, you might have a blip where there's certain times of the day where there's like a lot of traffic, but it rarely happens. I'll be honest, like probably maybe once every like 3 months you'll have a situation like that where it's like overloaded and you can barely get on the internet. But most of the time it's excellent, if I'm honest.
So I have and I'm not saying this to flex, I'm saying this for context. Me and my brother live together, and we have the best internet that you can get in South Africa, to my knowledge. It is 200 megabits up down.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I see a lot of people in America going, "Oh, my gigabit internet is only reaching 900 Mbps down." I'm like, no, shut the fuck up. Do you know what I would do to have that kind of internet, and for the prices that they get it for? Internet down here is extremely, extremely expensive, relatively speaking, relative to other countries. Like we pay. Back when I still lived in the town I go to university to, I'm studying long distance now. I paid, if I did a quick conversion in my head, like $60, 60 US dollars a month for a 20 megabit per second up down line. Okay. Yes, it was a fiber connection, but that's still an insane amount of money for a very, very low bandwidth connection. And the internet, every single time we get load shedding, our internet dies, and I have to reset, and I have to, go reconfigure the router.
But like, what happens when you're doing things like streaming, and because obviously streaming probably takes up the most internet, or downloading anything that like even what we're doing right now, just having a Zoom call, anything where like the internet's having to host it essentially. And deliver a lot of fast internet connection just quickly. Like how does that work? Like what is it? Can you watch things without there being blips, or?
Sometimes there are, but like I said, I'm fortunate enough that me and my brother have really good internet. That wasn't always the case. I have lived with very bad internet. I mean, I remember most of until I was like, until I moved to university. So until I was 18, I could not watch a YouTube video in 1080p without it buffering. 720p was a struggle. Like it just wasn't. As soon as I saw a video is in 60 FPS, I had to watch it in 480p. Otherwise, it would not work. And it would only go 720p late at night if no one else was on the network. Then I could watch a YouTube video nice and smoothly. I remember sites would take long to load. Images would. I mean, most people click on a site and the images are just there. They don't click on a site and think, okay, I'll just have to wait a few seconds for the images to load. Like I know, and for legality, I have never torrented anything illegal in my life. So a movie, if I wanted to download a movie, I would have to queue it the night before, go to sleep, wake up, and 8 hours later the movie would be downloaded. And this is like a 720p hour-long movie. Like that's just how we did things, just slow internet. And on the topic of people sabotaging, it's the people that they're looking for the copper cables so they can melt the copper down and sell it. And I assume they thought the fiber cable that connects the internet here was, not a copper cable, and they just fucking broke it. Sorry for the language, but that was frustrating.
Let's just quickly talk about illegal downloads. Now, years ago, I remember when this sort of first kind of started being a thing here in the UK, in sort of the mid 2000s, sort of when LimeWire and websites like that were, or programs like that, were prevalent. There were obviously a lot of, there was just stuff in the government, and the police would often say things like, you'll get a massive fine, and your internet service provider will cancel your internet, and blah 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 blah. And I have heard stories about this, like it does happen, but it seems to me like it's very rare. Like you would have to be downloading like maybe all the time, constantly, plus maybe seeding as well. Like it doesn't really seem like something that often happens. And I know from personal experience, I've lived in other countries in Europe where they don't actually give a fuck. Like, it's not even illegal. It's just like everyone does it. So it sounds like something that is different from country to country. Now you sort of mentioned there, like, I've to save face, like, I've never done this, whatever. Is it really serious in Africa? Like, what are the penalties?
No, I mean, you can get up to 5 years jail time, but
Whoa! I've heard of,
what? Yeah, and at 5 years jail time and a few $1,000s. No, it's sorry, I'm confused. It's 1 year jail time and 5,000 rand, which is like a 350 USD fine. Sorry, I confused the numbers there. But still, a year jail time, and that's per offense.
So, like, just one movie could get you 5
Yeah,
years jail time.
But, and I'm pretty sure this is how it works in most countries. It's not the downloading that's illegal. The language is very specific. It says the distribution of illegally copyrighted material. So, and I'm not saying do this because it's scummy, but if you set up your torrenter to never upload, then you're not breaking any laws, because downloading isn't illegal. Having the things isn't illegal. It is uploading. It's sharing them. That's illegal.
Seeding is illegal.
Yeah, seeding is the illegal part. Now, if I torrent completely legal free shareware programs that I get legally with the permission of people, I've never torrented anything, so I just need to cover my ass. I seed because I'm not at that bad, but a lot of my biggest advice that I can give to someone is invest in a VPN. Because if you get a good one, and I'm saying this without being sponsored at all, ExpressVPN, if you get it, it's fast enough. So especially if you choose a node in your own country or in a country near you, like there are ones in South Africa that I can just choose, which means one, your ISP can't see what you're doing, so you don't have to worry if you're Googling some weird things. And I mean, come on, we've all Googled the odd question here and there. You don't have to worry about them. And a quality VPN is indispensable. It's something that is, and don't cheap out. I've used free VPNs before, and I still have them for just in case. Like something like Proton VPN. But you cannot. It just can't compare to a good quality paid VPN like Express or NordVPN, because there are a lot of websites that ban the typical IP addresses of VPNs, but if you get a good one, that can't happen because it's a random IP. And so it's something that takes a lot of the worry out of it.
Absolutely.
And on the legality, I'm not worried that the cops will come busting down my door. They're pretty incompetent. I say that.
That makes sense. It also kind of makes sense as to why torrenting has not actually been made illegal, because I've seen, like, obviously a lot of court cases, companies like Pirate Bay are still in existence, and I wonder, like, how is this possible? But it's probably on that premise that, like, not everything that's torrented and shared is illegal. Like you mentioned there, like, software developers will share free programs with each other, totally legal, totally above board. It's all to do with copyright, really. That's the issue.
Work with torrenting. If you download the Windows updates, that's a torrent. That's
exactly
peer-to-peer.
Right, yeah.
Just so people know that just torrenting isn't illegal, it's piracy that's illegal. People confuse the two a lot.
Yeah. Let's move it back to just talking about Africa for a second. Talk us through, because you said it sucks living there. Tell me about the good and the bad about Africa, or South Africa, sorry.
Well, one thing I can say, the country itself, like the physical land, it's beautiful. It's a really, I mean, it's hot permanently. It's a very pretty place to be. And for tourists, I encourage them, you don't go to the cities. Don't go to Johannesburg or Cape Town or Pretoria or Bloemfontein. Go to somewhere like Sutherland, where the big telescope is, and something that very few people have seen, the stars on a truly clear night away from a city. It is breathtaking. And it is something that I encourage anyone. If you think, hey, what should I do with like some excess money I have? I want to take a trip. Take a trip to the middle of nowhere and watch the stars, because there's nothing like it. So the country is very nice, and the culture of people, because it's essentially a melting pot of a bunch of different cultures, which just boils down to South African culture. It's the people in general are nice, and the food is great, because, like I said, it's a melting pot of just everyone else's food. So you could just it's something you can sit down in like an average restaurant, and you can get like something Indian, something Japanese, something American, like a cheeseburger, because only the Americans can think to add an unholy amount of cheese onto a burger. It's just something a lot of people, and we have our own food like biltong, which is basically beef jerky, but better in every single possible way imaginable. Then the bad is, once again, it can be boiled down to the people. It's, racism is still something that runs deep here, and a lot of people will say, oh, yeah, it's the white people's fault. No, it's not. There's a lot of, yes, there are white racists, but it's not just white people who are racist. And I know this is a bit of a hot take. Everyone can be racist. And saying only white people can be racist is a racist statement in and of itself, because we're not. Like, I'm sitting here. I'm not racist. I honestly do not care what skin. Like, and people think I mean this maliciously, but I cannot give less of a shit what color your skin is, because it honestly doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I think that people need to realize this perspective I'm speaking of is, I'm speaking from the perspective of a white man in a country where the majority is black and colored people. Like, it's not the American situation where, like, we can't oppress them even if we wanted to. They outnumber us a lot. Like, even if we wanted to decide, hey, yeah, we want to bring that whole apartheid thing back again. No, it's not gonna happen. It's not, and it's not something that we want. On the topic of apartheid wasn't abolished by Nelson Mandela. It was abolished by a white president. Nelson Mandela had a huge role, and he is a great man, but if it wasn't for the cooperation of a lot of people working together, because that's what it's about. It's about people working together to fight the problems, not separating, say, oh, white men are the problem. No, racism is the problem, and we all need to work together to fight against that. Not say, oh, they are the problem, let's boot them out. And yes, they are white racists, but guess what? They are racists of every single race, creed, nationality, and gender you can possibly imagine, because prejudice is just something that runs deep in people. And I'm not saying that I haven't said racist things or done racist things. I have. I openly admit to that, because it's part of the culture of how we were raised. Some people are just racist, and if you're exposed to that at a young age, you sort of pick up on some of that. But I don't do it anymore, especially not on purpose, because that's not how I want to live, and that's not how I think this place should be run. And people need to, I mean, one of the largest political figures in our country wrote a song called, that the title translates to Shoot the Farmers, which farmers are what white people are referred to here. So it literally sings, shoot the whites, and people, there was no uproar. In fact, a lot of people agreed with him. And that, if I went into the streets and started singing shoot the blacks, I would be, to use the word, I would be cancelled faster than I can finish the sentence. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people who don't realize it runs both ways. And I'm not saying that I am living a bad life and that I am being discriminated against. I'm not. But what I'm saying is, people need to, especially Americans, they need to get their heads out of their asses and realize, I wish I could just make some of those people live in South Africa, live in the shoes of the average South African for a week. Mm-hmm. Because my mother lives on a farm. I need to live every single day worrying that she might be murdered, because the farm murders are a thing. People target farmers and kill them because of reparations, and because they want not the land to be rightfully given to them, they want to take it. If they don't want to go through the legal system to get land that was taken from their forefathers, they just want to go in and take it, which isn't the right way to do it. Because I know white farmers who have been on those farms since their ancestors landed in this country. And yes, give some of the land back, but don't just take people's livelihoods away. There is a balance there that can be met, where everyone can get what they want and what they need, and we can start, building a good, proper country. But then, it's never going to happen, because the government is corrupt, the people hate each other, we can't keep the fucking lights on.
Yeah,
that was a bit of a rant.
No, it's fine. It's kind of crazy, like some of the things that are going on there, like, yeah, those blackouts, the internet problems. Obviously, as you mentioned, the mass racism. I mean, racism is prevalent in any country. It's just one of those things. It's ignorance. I mean, it interests me I can understand in a country like South Africa where there's a lot of history there. There's, yeah, I'm not by any means, saying it's okay, but like I at least understand it. Like why it still happens to this day. When I see it in countries like, the UK, again, it is rooted in history, but it's kind of, it's nonsensical. I mean, racism is nonsensical anyway, obviously, but it's like, I don't know. It's like they never have any good arguments. They never have any kind of like logical arguments. They never have anything. It's just kind of mass ignorance organized into like groups. And I mean, it's like you said at the very beginning, like you don't care if someone's black, white, Asian, whatever, like, and it's the same for me. I don't even think in such terms. Like I'm just kind of, I see people, do you know what I mean? And I'm not trying to be all like preachy here, but genuinely that's how I see it. I grew up in London in the UK, which is a multicultural city, and from a very young age I was exposed to people from all different nationalities, creeds, colors, whatever, and that for me was just life. That's okay, that's just people look different, people. And if anything, the one thing about me as a person is I've always had a kind of like childlike fascination with anything that differs from me. So like if I see a black person, if I see an Asian, a Muslim, I just want to know more. I want to know more about their culture. I want to know, like, because I'm just fascinated. I like anything that's anything that I have not experienced or I know nothing about. I want to know more about. And I don't understand racists from that perspective, because it's like, why wouldn't you want to know about all the amazing things that exist in the world and all the different nationalities, cultures, different types of music, different types of food? I mean, if you're a racist, you're essentially just like restricting yourself, limiting your own life experience. And I just think that's really sad. And you're just losing out in the long run. And I feel like a broken record. I've said this before on the podcast, but like I whenever I actually hear a racist or meet a racist, like I just don't actually know what to say. I mean, obviously, if they're like doing that to a friend of mine, I'll confront them, obviously, and I have done. But like when you just hear it or see it, it's like, really? Like, what? You kind of just find yourself like taken back. You're like, of all the things in the world to be like, worried about doing in everyday life, this is the thing. This is this. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of blows
the thing you're
my mind.
deciding to waste your time on.
Yeah, and it to me,
having someone else they invalid because of how they look.
But here's the thing: like every sort of documentary I've ever seen on racists, like if you take some of the stuff in the America with the KKK and stuff, when you get people that do documentaries where they go, like there's this amazing black guy in America, I can't remember his name, but he's famous for sitting down with the leaders of KKK and just talking to them, just having a normal conversation. And he's like, done that successfully. He's converted many, many people. He's an amazing man. I can't remember his name, but amazing guy. And it always interests me when you confront racists and you just, you don't get angry, you don't get aggressive, you just literally deconstruct their argument. You say, okay, so this is what you believe. Tell me why you believe that. And then you basically throw counter arguments in a calm and rational manner. And a lot of the time you can just defeat them and they don't know what to say next, because all of their hatred is illogical. And it's built from, years of paranoia of reading things in newspapers or what, their parents, their families have installed in them over generations. And none of it comes from, actual experience. And don't get me wrong, I know there are some people out there that have had bad experiences with people from certain races, and they base that kind of prejudice on that. But I think it's kind of a bit of a leap to say, okay, so a few people fucked me over from like this particular race, therefore I'm going to hate them for eternity. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. People are people. You can get screwed over by anyone and it doesn't have any reflection on their nationality, creed, color, race, whatever. It's just that particular person screwed you over, because humans unfortunately are like that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Another thing is that I think people need to acknowledge is people always bring up the 15-50%, I mean the 13-50% argument in America. I think the exact quote is, despite making up only 13% of the population, black people commit 50% of the violent crimes. Right? That's a thing. That's a statistic that gets thrown around in America. Now, I don't know if the statistic is true or not. I haven't been bothered to look it up. But if it's true, I'm going to humor it and say, let's say it's true. Instead of saying, hey, black people are more violent, let's say, hey, let's look into this. Let's see why this is happening. Is it disenfranchisement? Is it oppression? Is it just general discrimination that they feel they need to do this? Don't denounce statistics. Don't denounce facts. Find the root of the facts. And if it's a problem, fix it. Because something that seems like a problem, no one should commit any violent crime. So let's find the root and fix it. It's like, what if it's desperation? What if, because it's, if you go by ratios, I shouldn't say this because I have no idea about my own country's statistics, but in my own experience, if you just go by ratios, then more black people live in poverty than white people in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you don't go by ratios, because they are like 8-1 outnumber, if I remember the figures correctly. So why is that? Is it still remnants of what happened during apartheid? Is it discrimination in the workplace? People not willing to hire black or colored workers? Like, find the problem and fix it. Don't denounce the statistic, because a lot of things, those statistics will point to a larger problem that needs addressing. And if you say, oh, no, that can't be true, oh, that's fake news, then you're going to miss out on that problem and miss out on an opportunity to address it and fix it. Mm-hmm. Like so many times, it's like, to bring it back to being a programmer, it's like seeing a bug, saying, "Oh no, it's not a problem," and just building on with it, and eventually it grows into a much bigger problem that's much harder to fix. Is they're just ironing it out when you have the chance. And I think that we can achieve so much if we just work together and put our bullshit differences aside for once.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. Especially if our ambition is to explore space and potentially meet extraterrestrials. I think the fact that we can't even get along with each other says a lot about our chances of success with regards to that. So anyway, moving it forward, you're studying programming at university. You've mentioned quite a few times throughout that you're involved in that sphere. So how is it going, and what do you plan to do after university for work?
Well, I really want to go into either AI or virtual reality. Like those, I think those two are the future of my field, But I mean, what I really want to do, and I think that's the dream, is make a success in podcasting or YouTubing or streaming, or even the editing that I'm doing. Like working with multimedia is something that I really enjoy, like audio, video, images. Mm-hmm. So if I can make a job out of that, I'd be happy. Like if this editor thing can turn into something that pays enough to live off of, if I can manage to start making an income from streaming and YouTube and podcasts and things like that, that's the dream. But if not, I would be happy working like programming with AI or virtual reality or anything like that.
Yeah, you mentioned a few times within that and throughout the podcast, that you do video editing. And I noticed that you're a video editor for a fairly successful YouTuber by the name of Slick Goku, who I believe has somewhere in the region of 70,000 to 100,000 subscribers.
I think he crossed 80K like a week or so ago. If I'm
right, yeah.
I mean, yeah. I should probably keep up better. Oh, he crossed 90,000. Wow.
Okay, wow.
I know there's a bit of a push going from his community to try and get him over 100K by like the end of the month, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, he does kind of like was it like Dragon Ball Z style meme videos? Is that right? Something like that?
Yeah. Originally, he originally, the character came from a different channel, the 2GS, I think it was, where they did a abridged version of Dragon Ball Z, and he, the man behind the channel, voiced the character Slick Goku, and I don't know if the series just stopped, but the people took their characters and kind of used the personas to create channels. So it is a channel that is quote unquote created and run by the Slick Goku character, and there'd be skits and a few story time videos, whatever the average YouTuber would do, but just with these characters.
And how did you get, this particular job working as his editor? And, how did you get into video editing in general? And how many clients are you actually managing at this time?
At this point, it's only one because university starts up in 3 days, and I want to check the workload before I pick up anything else.
Yeah.
I want to see what the workload so I can balance things, because I have a bit more time, so I can do more, but that's just without university being there. So I would just want to see before I pick up anything else. And it was pure luck. I went on Twitter for the first time in a very long time because the new episode of, I just rewatched Sword Art Online Abridged, which is, to anyone listening, if you didn't like Sword Art Online, the anime, go watch the Abridged series by Something Witty Entertainment on YouTube. It is honestly, not just funnier, but a better version of the story.
Mm-hmm.
So I checked his Twitter, and I went down a rabbit hole, and eventually I came across a tweet that the guy made and said, hey, he's looking for editors. I'm like, hey, I know how to edit. I can try this. So I sent him a message. He's like, okay, cool. I'll give you a video. You can edit it, and we'll see if it works out. And I did. And now I've accidentally managed to create a bit of not a main character, but like a side character in the universe. Like the editor is now a recognized character in his videos.
Oh, wow.
I didn't mean to happen, but now it is, which it's fun. And I enjoy doing it. And some of the work is tedious, but that's just what editing is. A lot of it can be very tedious, but it's fun. It's fun.
What advice would you be able to give to people that want to get into the field of video editing?
Patience is a virtue. Like, I cannot describe, like, you're going to spend hours and hours and hours working on a single, 5 seconds of the video. But as soon as it's all done and you get the feedback and you see, hey, people say, hey, this looks good, and you get paid, it's worth it. Because in the end, and this works for anything, this is advice for any job. In the end, the work you do, as soon as it's done, it's over. But the reward you get stays with you. Whether it's money or experience or anything like that, you keep that, you hold on to that. It's yours. So it's, in the end, you just need to push through. And also, figure out how keyframes work. They are invaluable. Those are the two main things for video editing.
You regularly write stories on Reddit. Why do you choose to do this? What are the benefits, and what do you like about Reddit?
Well, Reddit itself, I can take it or leave it as a platform, to be honest.
Okay.
The thing about Reddit, which makes it so special, if I can say it like that, is the amount of communities. There's always, you will find someone, some community that agrees with you, which can be bad because, I mean, no matter what you believe, there will be someone who agrees with you and believes with you. I started writing because I was just browsing Reddit 2 years back now, like early 2019, and something got recommended to me from a subreddit r/HFY, which stands for Humanity Fuck Yeah, which in a lot of movies, the trope is when we meet aliens, we're either the same as them or worse. But the entire theme of this subreddit is writing stories where humanity is the shit. We are the cream of the crop, the top of the line, the best of the best. And I decided, hey, no, I've written a few things before, but I've never published anything or put anything out there. So let's try and write something. So I wrote an open-ended story, a short open-ended thing about aliens invading and, just one dude helping a squadron of other aliens that came to help us. And it got a really positive reception. So I was like, okay, let's keep this going. And now I am just yesterday, I finally, after 2 months of waiting, I finally wrote the second part of the last arc of the story. So it took off, and a lot of people really enjoyed it, which means a lot to me. I'm very happy that it managed to take off like that.
Oh, congrats, man. Sounds like certainly something you should continue doing, for sure.
No, I'm gonna finish this story. If it kills me, I'm going to finally finish this thing. And yeah, and it's a lot of fun. I discovered I really enjoy writing, and I already have I have a notebook in my drawer. Well, it's not in this drawer; it's in one of these drawers, which I write all my. Oh no, it's in my backpack. That's over there. I'm not going to go get it right now. But all of I already have ideas for the next 3 stories that I'm going to write after this one. Not in this universe, not even in the same genre necessarily. I want to try branching out, but. I already know what I'm going to write as soon as I finish this one. And I know how this story is going to finish as well. I just need to, fill in the space between now and the end. And it's a lot of fun. And it's going to be kind of sad once I finish it because, I've built this universe. I created the characters. You grow attached to these kind of things.
Yeah, I get that.
All good things must come to an end.
Absolutely. That's pretty much what I was going to say next. So you're currently working on a visual novel style game. Tell us more about that.
Ooh, okay, so again, this is going to reflect badly on me, but the game is going to be rated R+. But optionally, there's going to be a trigger for that. And the only reason I made that decision is because hentai games sell better.
Ah, okay.
I went and checked. They honestly do. I don't know why I decided to do this. I can't pinpoint you to a moment where I decided, hey, this is something I'm going to do. It's just sometime a day I just decided to sit down. I see a lot of these games in my Steam recommendations because I have friends who play them, and you get recommended things that your friends do, and they don't play hentai games; they play visual novel games. And so I was like, I get recommended some of these. I can make one of these. I could naively I thought I can write. It's a lot harder than it seems to write something with multiple endings, but so I sat down and I started writing up character sheets for the 6 main girls in the story, because one of the tropes is that you have your choice between which of these girls you want to pursue, and then you get their good or bad ending. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to do the degenerate thing where you can land more than one. No, you will choose, and you will fucking persevere, and you will get the bad ending if you fuck up. And it's something that I've decided I want this to actually write a good story, so the fan service is going to be just that. It's going to be fan service, and I want to put it like this is the best way I can put it is and the same thing for the story that I'm writing on Reddit. I want my stories to be able to make people cry, if I can put it like that. Like I want to actually make people feel something, not just see, oh yeah, that was cool, and then move on. I want to try and leave an impact. So yeah, I have one of my friends who said he'll try to do the art. So at least, that's some cheap labor that I'm getting to. Yeah, it's nowhere near done. It's not even really started yet. I'm just still working on the main storylines before I start padding it out and actually making it into a fully fledged story, and then a game that is playable.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's something I want to try and see if I can get like the version 1 by the end of the year.
Oh, best of luck with that. I hope it goes well.
Thanks.
So you occasionally create YouTube channels, and I thought YouTube videos, and I thought this was pretty interesting because you've got at least 1,000 followers, subscribers, which is hard to get. I mean, I've been trying for close to 2.5 years to get.
No. Sorry, I think you may have me confused with someone else. I do not have at least 1,000 subs. I think you may have me confused. I think. If I say that I may have got my streams crossed with the guy I edit with, I have almost 0.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because I remember I looked at one of the links that you have, and it leads to a YouTube channel where there's like at least 1,000, or there's a lot of viewers or something. So you don't have a YouTube channel, or you don't do anything?
No, I do have a YouTube channel. I'm sorry, I may have linked you incorrectly then there. Sorry,
okay.
No, I didn't mean to mislead you or anything like that. No, on my channel, but I have like 9 subscribers.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to mislead you or anything like that.
Well, how dare you?
If I meant to mess that up.
It's cool, man. I mean, are you ever going to, considering the fact that you're a video editor, do you think you'll ever create videos for YouTube just for your own stuff in the future? Or
I have, but a lot of them are just, the nice word is a shit post. Like one of them is, I assume you've seen Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
Well, I took a bit of the last battle of Avengers Endgame, the part where Captain Marvel comes flying in, but I cut out her scenes and replaced it with scenes of Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story 2.
That's kind of jokes.
It's one of in my opinion, one of the best things that I've ever created.
How many views did it get?
Let me quickly go have a look. I mean, I can
Maybe it's the views I'm thinking of that had you had like a lot of views or something like that.
If I have, then it's something that I've absolutely missed. Can I just click on this video, please? Why is everything struggling today?
It will be because you're trying to do two things at once. Like
No, it's not slow. It's just I can't click on it. Oh, it's got like 18 views now.
Okay, all right.
And like I said, I don't really go out of my way to promote anything. You know, it's just I just kind of do my own thing. And like I said, I mean, this is a video that should have gotten copy striked instantly because you know it's not okay. I stole. I straight up stole, you know, the music from Toy Story 2, but it's still fair use, so I can't monetize it, but I'm still gonna put it on because I think it's funny.
It's interesting. It's interesting when it comes to YouTube, like whether or not it's worth promoting or not, because like I've got 3 YouTube channels now, right? And I just simply put don't have the time to do everything that I want to do. So like I had to make the conscious decision to promote everything on my main channel, not promote on my second channel, and on my third channel only promote if it's like specific for a topic, something trending, a particular occasion, something like that. Yeah. I did pre-schedule everything for like 3 months worth of content, and I've still got loads of content to it's like podcast clips essentially, right? But like I noticed with all the stuff that I've already promoted and released in this first month of the channel being sort of in existence, I've gotten like no views at all. And this is like promotion on Twitter, Reddit, all the usual channels. Like it just does nothing. So I was like, well, I'm not going to continue to waste my time doing this if it's not going to kind of go anywhere. I'll keep putting the stuff on YouTube and doing all the behind the scenes stuff that you have to do for YouTube, but I don't see the point of promoting it elsewhere. But the interesting thing is a lot of my favorite YouTubers, I've noticed do next to no promotion at all. Like once in a blue moon, they might say, hey, here's a link, but most of the time they don't bother and their videos just smash. So it makes me wonder, like, what's the best idea? Is it better to promote? Is it better not to promote? Like, who knows?
Here's the thing: the hardest part is getting your first 1,000 subs. That's the hardest part of doing it. And the best thing is, and the most effective thing, and it's something that the people have shown with like graphs and shit, is using your fans. As soon as you start getting subs and views, do the call out. Say, hey, if you're watching this and you're not okay, everybody listening to this, if you're watching this and you're not subscribed or not following this podcast, click the follow button and leave a rating. And people say, oh, they don't like it, but you can. I have a hair in my mouth. There we go. If you do that call out, you can see there's always a spike. That it's the reason why Dream, one of the biggest Minecraft YouTubers, he does that at the beginning of every single one of his videos because it's effective. And you tell them, hey, if you have a friend, share this video to them or share this podcast to them if you think they might like it. You know, get the word out there. That's you know, and another thing that's very effective is setting goals for your community. Say, hey, let's see if we can get like up to like 20 subs by the end of February, or 50 or 100 or whatever goal you want to set. You know, let's see if we can get to this point.
You're completely right. Like I changed my whole MO with this because I used to be like really stubborn. I was like, no, I'll never do this. I hate YouTubers that do this, blah, blah, blah. And then I had a really long conversation with one of my streamer friends, and he was like, listen, you just need to do this. Like just bury your pride and just fucking do it because it will have an effect on, you know, because he said like, if you want to grow, you need to do this. And so I sucked up my pride, I changed my style, and I started doing it. And like within the last, let's say 2 or 3 months, I've grown significant. I mean, it's small, I'll give it that. But, you know, I've gone for, I think I was stuck on like 480 subscribers for like at least 3 or 4 months. And now I've gone up to, I'm close to 570 subscribers at this point. And my goal for the year is 1,000 subscribers. And then the second channel, I'm trying to get to 100. And the third channel, I'm trying to get to 50. So I've set those goals for 2021. And it's slowly happening on the main channel, like very, very slowly. But, you know, it's all about consistency and pushing it. And like you said, these CTAs, I do think that they're working. Like I'm experimenting a lot. So with the podcast, I always put the clip at the beginning. And then with the podcast clips, depending on the length of the clip, is where I put the promo. So if it's a really long clip, I'll put it at the beginning. If it's a really short clip, I'll put it straight at the end. Same with my music videos. I always put the clip at the end. Like, I try to do it in a way that makes sense, where it's like, okay, you know, if you're here to watch music, you just want to see the music straight away, right?
Yeah.
If you want to see a short podcast clip, you want to see the clip. You don't want to see a promo. But if it's a long clip, let's say 10 minutes, makes sense to put it at the beginning. Same with this full podcast episodes. And I've also started kind of saying at the end of every podcast, like, you know, yeah, make sure to like, share, subscribe. I keep telling my audience to do this stuff. I don't know necessarily if they do it or not, but it's just good to get into the habit of this. And then once you start to grow an audience, like I've started to get people who are in my regular audience who will sometimes do what I ask them to do, and are very reactive and do regularly watch the content. So I think it is a case of being consistent and yeah, like asking, not being afraid to ask. I think that's the problem. You can't have that attitude of, oh, I shouldn't ask them. No, ask them, because otherwise people don't know what you want to do. They don't know that this is what you're trying to do.
I mean, a lot of the times I would go, and I mean, I can speak from 2 points of view here, as a viewer and as a creator. I've sat and I've watched a YouTube video, and it happened a few times where I just start watching a chain of a person's YouTube videos, and this guy is really entertaining, and you get so used to, if you enjoy someone, oh yeah, I'm subscribed, but then he did, hey, go look if you're subscribed, and if you're not, and I scroll down like, hey, I'm not. Let me drop this guy a sub.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, when I was streaming, like I was like, I don't want to tell them to follow me. That's kind of scummy. But then I started, if I see someone new in my channel, hey, how's it going, Big Wang 69? Hey, drop me a follow. Drop me a follow if you haven't yet, man. And it just works. You see it improve. You see the numbers get bigger if you do that. And I would kill to see not really, I'm not a murderer, but I would metaphorically kill to see, get some audience interaction for our podcast, because that's something that's a bit demoralizing. Is if you don't see any kind of, this is going to sound like a weird way of saying it, but proof that there's actually someone out there listening.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. The one thing I've noticed, like this will be the 69th episode of the podcast, and people, yeah, I know. Hey, people always ask me like, oh, how many views have you got? How many subscribers have you got? And then they sort of do that whole, oh, okay, like, oh, you don't have like 10K, you don't have 1,000 people listening every time. But the thing is, it's not about the numbers, it's about consistency. It's about how regularly are the same people watching. It's the thing is, right now I've been concerned at the fact that, like, okay, one episode, let's take YouTube. Sometimes one podcast will do 10 views, the next one will do 50, right? That to me is not good. That's a problem, because it's like, okay, there's a bit of interest in this one because that person shared it to their audience, right? Or maybe it's a topic that's interesting. Then the next one comes and people aren't interested as much. And I'm trying to look at that community angle. I'm trying to build a community that will tune in every time, because it's more about building the brand. It's not about trying to, appeal to certain subjects. Like, it's good to sort of throw stuff out there, experiment, try things. But, the main thing you should be focusing on is building that brand, building a community of people that will regularly come to see you and will listen to anything, that you do, because they are interested in you specifically.
Yeah. It's something that, oh, wow. Sorry, I just went onto our podcast because I wanted to check a theory that I have. A lot of it is naming your episodes. Because here's the thing, names and thumbnails, people underestimate how important that is.
Yeah.
Because that's the first thing that someone sees. That's why I always try and get something that is at least an interesting name for an episode. That's why, like, when we name it, we always try and get something decent, or at least something attention grabbing. Because that's what would compel someone to click. If they just see, 50 podcasts and they recommend, I need to make sure that ours stand out. Like, the name is attention grabbing. It's like, hey, listen, yes, I see this thing called Alien Stole Our Passwords. I'm gonna click on it. That sounds cool. Or that's why, like, oh, and sorry, I'm seeing our episode titles, and looking back, they all make me disappointed in myself that we thought of them. But on the other hand, I love them a lot.
I think it's a very good point that you touch on. I've had this conversation with many of my friends online, and I think you can make a case for either of them. Like, I always keep my podcast titles conventional, that they just have the podcast, the number, the person, just because I like it that way. I know that I did try in the very beginning having like, okay, Steelsy on, and then I would list all the topics, but I just felt like it was less effective and I just didn't like it. So instead, I put all that information in the descriptions of episodes, and I experiment with hashtags and video tags and so on, right? Because my main thing is that, look, the podcast should be the draw, like that people, eventually will get into the idea of, oh, the Christian Reeve podcast, I need to tune into that. That's something I need to tune into. This is, you know what I mean? So that's why I do it in that way. It's intended for that audience. But I totally understand with a podcast like yourself, like the one that you've got, the draw is the titles, the topics, like that's going to draw the people in. And I think there's just different strategies to this thing. And
I mean, I'd like to eventually have like a consistent, or like be able to, recognize the name in the comments, see, hey, that person's been here for like forever, like but on the other hand, sometimes you just need to, I mean, the point of our podcast is being, it's a comedy podcast. It's supposed to be a bit outlandish. So, but I completely understand your perspective of, trying to, build a brand. People need to look and see, oh yeah, I know this podcast just by looking at it.
But here's the thing, like, to your point before, the thing that I really spend a lot of time on is that information that's provided to give people a reason to, like, why to check it out, and the thumbnails. So two things that I really do all the time is I try to come up with like funny sort of thumbnails for clips, funny images that are connected to the clips and subjects and stuff. For the main episode, the main podcast videos, I will include either a video still of that person plus something connected to them, or just cool images of them from Instagram. So to give an example, my previous guest, Chris Waters, is a guy that has a business that does like treasure hunts and scavenger hunts for adults, right? So I had a still of him from the video, and he had like a really cool background with all the stuff that he uses, all the props in the background. And then the image to the left is like something that he's designed, some sort of like, parchment or something like that. And I put that all together. And then at the bottom, it's got the name, podcast, episode number, all of that stuff. So it's like an interesting, engaging thing, and it's like, oh, maybe I'll want to check this out because that guy looks interesting. And the same with Spotify, or I use Anchor as the hosting platform, but I started uploading thumbnail images, which is something that you should do if you have a podcast, by the way. Try to have creative thumbnail images, both for new listeners and current listeners, because it gives people sort of a reason to click, because the images are different and there's different topics and stuff. So there's more of a draw. Like every episode is different. It's basic stuff, but like, yeah, I totally agree with you. Like you've got to either, because there's different people on different sides of the fence. Wow, I'm terrible with words today. I do apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
It's not normally my problem, but today it is. So there's two arguments in the content creator community, like, are titles more important or are images more important? And I think both are important, obviously, but I think it depends for individual creators. Sometimes one or the other is more important. I think just naturally on YouTube, like the thumbnails were always going to be the draw. But to be honest, a lot of my favorite YouTubers, I'll see the title and I'm more interested in that. And if anything, the thumbnails irritate me because it's just some generic picture of them going, where they've just taken a picture of themselves doing like some shocked face and stuff. And it's mostly just clickbait. So you have to know the creator to know if it's genuine or just clickbait bullshit.
No.
But I think you can make a fair case for both, to be honest. And I think it's something that all content creators should be paying attention to. like I said, I've had a bit of a turnaround. I used to be very stubborn with these things. Now I try as much as I can. I'm not a designer by any means, but I try to make the thumbnails as good as possible. And I always try to experiment. Like I told you before with the clips and where I put them, that's mostly for experimentation and because I'm trying to kind of maximize where I think people are most likely to, view that and then act on that call to action. Like I think, for example, if I would have put those subscribe promos at the beginning of a music video, I think that's going to cause more people to click off than to click on.
But if it's in the end, then they've already listened to the song, they've enjoyed it, and then they can make the decision, hey, do you want to see more of this?
Exactly, yeah. Moving it forward, so you occasionally stream on Twitch. When will you be streaming again in the future? Perhaps maybe are you thinking of doing like a live podcast episode? Like, what are the plans for Twitch with you?
I have been thinking about starting doing our podcast live. But on the other hand, like it's something that you need to think about because I've seen a lot of people do like Patreon tiers where you can listen in live instead.
Yeah.
And we need to balance. Okay, do I want to future-proof the podcast in case it gets big, so it can act more, so it can have a bigger reward for someone who chooses to support on Patreon, or do I want to try it now and see if that gets more? But I plan to. I've stopped streaming a little bit for a while now, as I started getting some other things in order. But I plan to pick it up again and start going back at it again at decent force soon, like within the next week or so. I took a trip. Like I said before we started, I took a trip this weekend, and it's given me back a lot of my motivation. Like I saw some old friends, It gave me back a lot of motivation, put the pep back in my step. So I've already planned a few stuff for YouTube as well. Like I have some things in the works now that if my motivation just holds, because that's something that's a lot of people I know struggle with it too. Is just keeping the motivation up and keeping the drive. As long as I can keep that motivation and drive, I'm gonna start streaming again within a week, maybe not in this week, but maybe. So within the week, I'm gonna start streaming again. I want to get these YouTube things started. I'm working on some scripts, and then I need to edit it, which I'm trying to make a bit more higher end. It's not gonna be like on the best level, but I want to make decent content as well as the trash that I usually throw on my channel.
That's
like
good,
the
man.
Thing, which is objectively garbage, but it's still great. I love it.
No, I think like over time these things get like perfected anyway. Like I've decided to upload less on my main channel now, and I'm gonna take more breaks. I'm gonna because I've been uploading pretty much every single day for like 6 to 8 months at this point, and I've seen a lot online about how that's ineffective. Both for streaming and for YouTube. I think it depends on the creator, but there's a lot of content that I've produced now, which I think needs breathing space. And I don't think it's necessary to stream every day and upload every single day. And I think that if anything, that can actually be harmful for your channel by doing that. So I think that, it's worth taking that time, perfecting that content, perfecting those streams and doing them like now and again. Like for instance, with me and streaming, I do this thing now where I stream via Restream on YouTube, Twitch and DLive at the same time. And I do it sort of like every week or every 2 weeks as a sort of like an AMA/discussion thing. And it can go up to like 3 hours sometimes. And that does really well. It does good numbers for me. But the key is that I don't do it often. And it's like one of the only opportunities for my audience to interact with me in real time. Because before I was doing it all the time, streaming like every single day. And I sort of realized like the fact that I do this so often means that like there's less incentive for people to actually drop in. Whereas if it's not often, there's more incentive for people to drop in. It's just basic.
It's supply and demand. It's supply and demand. If you give too much supply to too little demand, they'll get bored. And it's a balance, because if you give too little supply, they'll move on to that thing. But if you give just enough supply to keep them interested, then you'll keep getting the numbers.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I have a question. Have you ever thought about branching out to other types of media? Like the biggest one I can think of right now is gaming, for example.
Yeah, I just don't have the money to do gaming. I've done retro gaming. It's like the only thing I can do, but I just don't have the money to do it. Unfortunately, I would love to, but yeah, just don't have the money.
That's just something like piracy. Not that I would ever do it, but piracy really
It's
comes
not
in
even that.
handy.
Like, I would need a gaming PC. I would need a proper television. I would need a lot of different things. Like, it's not just the
Not
games.
necessarily. I mean,
No, I really would, dude. Like, honestly,
the biggest game on in the world right now. Well, maybe not anymore, but for a while was Minecraft, and that doesn't really need. I'm not.
Dude, trust me. My can't even. Sorry, my PC can't even handle current games. Like, okay, for example, I tried to do Among Us while on Twitch. I tried to like play the game, stream it, right, and that just completely fucked up. Like, it went super slow. It didn't work. Like, I just can't do that. I can't do modern games with my current setup, and I've just learned to accept it. And one day I will be able to do these things. And I've said this to my audience, like, every time they ask me, like, why don't you do this, why don't you get improve this equipment, like, blah blah blah, I'm like, one day I will. When I have that money, when I'm earning from this, I will always reinvest it, as I have done already. These headphones were a gift from a viewer. Shout out to Kirk, my main man SoCal. This microphone here was a donation from Steelsy, a fellow Twitch streamer. So it's like, it does happen from time to time, but it's a gradual thing. It takes time. One day I will be doing this, but right now it's just not possible.
Yeah, I understand. And it's because my main content was gaming. Like, if I streamed on Twitch, it was for games. And I'm fortunate that, I mean, she's a bit old, but I have I should be very careful with that. My rig, she's still going.
Mm-hmm.
And computers are feminine. That's
Okay.
That's something that was drilled into me. Yeah, she treats me well. She's still working. I plan to upgrade, but because all of my parts are so old, and because it's a desktop, at this point, if I want to upgrade one thing, I need to replace everything, and it's gonna cost around somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 US dollars to replace everything with good parts. And I don't want to buy a low-end rig. I want to buy something that if I buy it now, it's gonna last me for 5 or 6 years, so I don't have to worry about it again. But now I need to save up all that money, which easier said than done.
It will happen, man.
We'll get there. I'll get there.
I think that's the key, isn't it? Is believing. Like, I've had that shift recently where I've started to believe. And something funny actually, which I want to throw out right now, which I think is relevant to what we're talking about. I had a hater on TikTok the other day. And this isn't really to do with the hate aspect. I just found it interesting because this person was getting annoyed. They were saying, oh, you're trash, you're this, you're that, right? And I found it funny. I was posting about it online. I was just having fun with it, right? And they gave up. Like, they haven't actually messaged in the past 2 days. And they've been like frantically going on. Like, I had like 35 hate comments from them on one video. And I said to them like several times, I was like, why are you so obsessed? Like, why do you care? If you don't like what I do, just don't watch. Like, I don't understand. And they literally said they were trying to get a rise out of me, and they said it's working. And I was like, well, you just don't understand me then, because I'm just I'm laughing at you. But I
absolutely love haters so much, because it's just fun to, because if I get somebody that, I mean, I haven't really gotten any in the creative space, but just IRL, I've met a few, and I always try to challenge them, because I was bullied when I was younger, and it sucks, but I'm glad it happened, because my roast game is on point. So I always try to challenge them, because I know, and the best thing is you don't try to interrupt them. You let them finish whatever they're trying to say, and then you clap back. And with enough, you need to make sure that just the first one is with enough force to destroy them. And as long as you can do that, that's advice. Don't ever get angry at a hater, to anyone. Don't ever, because then they win. Then they get what they want.
I didn't really want to focus on the hate aspect. The reason that I brought it up was that, like,
sorry.
No. But like, I understand, like, you know, it's something that all of us content creators deal with. It's just one of those things. And that's what I mean. Like, I didn't bring it up like to talk about it because at the end of the day, like, yeah, we all get haters. So what, right? The reason that I'm bringing it up is that, you know, if there's apathy in your content creation, you know, like that just no one cares, that's the worst thing. So having haters suggests that you're actually doing something right, because you're actually getting a response from people. And that's why I found this particular hater interesting, because they kept, every time I kept releasing a new video, they kept throwing the hate. And I was like, so this person wants me to stop essentially, but I'm not stopping, and therefore that bothers them. And I found that really interesting, and I used them in order to create content. Like I got content ideas from that exchange. And it makes me wonder about, just in general, when you're chasing these goals, you get a lot of haters, because when people see that you're actually doing well, that you're being creative, people are reacting positively. Like a lot of people that comment on my TikTok videos are being really positive. Like, you know, oh, I really like this song. Well done, blah, 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 right? And, you know, I do this for fun. Like, I do this because I want to get somewhere with it. You know, I want the podcast to do well. I want my content creating to become my job, basically. But I do this for enjoyment, for fun. And I think the more that you do that, and the longer that you do this, the more refined that your content becomes. Like, if you go back and you watch the first episodes of the podcast, I wouldn't say it was totally bad, because I had some podcasting experience before, but I wasn't as confident, for example, interviewing people as I am now. I wasn't as confident carrying a conversation for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours as I am now. It's just time. It's just practice, constantly just doing. And through that time, you figure certain things out. You figure like, oh, I can tweak this and it'll be better. I can do this and it'll be better. I can try this content and it'll be good. Like, for instance, comedy. I've never considered myself particularly funny, and I still don't, but I have posted some sort of comedy clips here and there, and people have responded well to it. And I thought, okay, so this is another avenue for me potentially. You know, if an idea comes, it's something I can try. And that's basically why I brought up the hater thing. I think it's from whatever feedback you're getting, good or bad, it suggests that you should keep going, keep trying, because you're going to go far with it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, any publicity is good publicity, as they say. It's
Absolutely.
not exactly true, but I mean, in this case, yeah. I mean, if you have a hater, use them.
Yeah, no, I actually did.
Out of them.
I made a hate video where I basically just mocked them, like not them specifically, but it was like my response to haters or something. And I've been waiting for the past like 2 days for this person to comment. I'm like, wow, like I'm always tempted to tag them in the video and be like, hey, I made a little video for you. I can't be bothered. Anyway, yeah, I want to ask you a bit more of a serious question.
Go ahead.
What's the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
Well, this is something that I've answered a few times. It's something that two things that I've learned from my late grandfather. Is one thing is you miss all the shots you don't take. You know, you can't win by not trying. You know, one of a piece of advice he gave me is, if you ever stuck with a decision, and it's obvious, it's like both outcomes are either equally good or equally bad, go with the one that's going to leave you with the best story to tell. Because in the end, that's what you're doing. You'll make every choice you make, you're making some more memories, you know? So try and get one that, if both have equal weight and you can't decide what you need to do, choose the one with the best story. And the second one is you don't make rum and coke without lemon in it. Those are the two pieces of life advice he left me with. And I'm not a big drinker, but I have to agree with him. And yeah, it's just the concept of, another thing is, yeah, there's actually a lot now that I think about it. Yeah, that's the biggest one. You can't let your indecisiveness paralyze you. You need to learn to make decisions. And I say this because I'm a very indecisive person. Mm-hmm. But in the end, you're either going to miss out, or you if you don't make the choice, you will miss out. And don't be afraid to make the big choices, to take the leap, you know, because what's the worst that can, let's say, use the classic example, Don't be afraid to ask a girl out. The worst that can happen is rejection, and every single person on the planet has been rejected, and they've gotten over it. I've been rejected. I don't want to make assumptions, but I assume you've been rejected before.
Oh, many times. Yeah, many times.
It's something. It's something that happens, and yeah, it sucks for like a week, and then you get over it. You know, you go for a pint with the boys, and then you move on. You find the next girl to reject you. You know, and you repeat that cycle. You repeat that cycle because here's the thing. I've talked with someone before, and they've told me that they are lonely. You know, they feel they really want companionship. And I'm like, here's the thing. But they're afraid to go and approach someone. Like, you're never going to meet someone if you don't take that first step. You're never going to be able to talk to someone and to get a girlfriend if you don't ask out. If you just sit there and say, oh, yes, I want to be with this girl, but, you know, I'm afraid to ask out because I might get rejected. So what? We've all been rejected. That's life. You get to tell people one day, yes, this girl rejected the shit out of me when I was young.
I want to chime in on this real quick because it's actually relevant to my life right now. So I've been single now for like 2 or 3 years, something like that. And at points, you know, especially because of lockdown, I felt very lonely and like, oh, maybe I'm going to die alone and all this crap, right? But it's just nonsense. At the end of the day, the most important thing, I think, above all, not just, you know, chatting to girls and reaching out. I think it's also really essential to make sure you're actually happy in your own life. And like so many people, both girls that have rejected me have said this to me, friends, family, you name it, have always said the same thing, which is, oh, when you least expect it, when you're not looking, that's when, you know, someone will come, right? And at first I kind of scoffed at that and I was like, oh, yeah, whatever, you know, it's never going to happen for me. I'm going to die alone. But I've actually realized, like, I was going on a walk the other day, just like a morning walk that I always go on. And I was just, in that moment, I was just so happy. And I was like, do you know what? I don't need someone to be happy. Like, it would be nice, but I don't need it anymore. I felt for so many years, for so long, I felt like I needed another person to be happy, but I don't. I can live without this. And that is what you need. That's what you need to aspire to get to that point, because that's when you become most attractive to people, because suddenly it's reverse psychology.
Yeah.
When you're not looking, you get it. It's like everything else. It's like, okay, yeah, sure. I want to be rich and famous and money and all this crap, right? But if you're frantically trying to get it, you're not going to get it. But if you're like, okay, yeah, I'll take it or leave it. Yeah, I'll work towards it. You have to work towards it. You have to put the steps in place. But then you sit back and relax and just enjoy life and things will happen. Manifestation. Be happy. Focus on getting happy. And the people will come to you, whether it's boys, girls, whatever you're into, that will come to you. But you need to focus on yourself first and foremost. Make sure you're happy. And everything else will follow.
People call me cynical when I say I'm going to die alone, but they must understand what I mean by it.
Mm-hmm.
But I say, yeah, I'm going to die alone. I don't mean, oh, I'm sad, I'm never going to find someone. I mean, I don't need someone. If I die alone, I'll be happy. I've learned to live with myself and be happy with the person that I am. If I find a girlfriend, you know what? That'll be awesome. I'm not going to say no to that. But you know, if I don't need it, you know, I can live my life with myself and be happy. Because it's something that people lack. It's being the ability to be happy with just themselves.
That's key. And I think many people are actually discovering that right now. I see loads of single people going like, oh, it's terrible. And I feel for them because, you know, I've been there, I've felt that. But like now I'm at the point where I don't feel like that anymore. Like I actually feel genuinely happy. And I think it's because of that realization. It's because, do you know what? Yeah, I like myself. I like who I am. I like that I'm constantly working myself to get better and that I can be happy without having to have people around me. You know, it's an amazing feeling when you get to that point, and I think a lot of people need to be working towards that. Like once you get that, it's like a feeling of almost like liberation in a sense. It's like okay, It's good. Life is good. I'm happy. And like, when you're happy, people want to be around you. When you're miserable, no one wants to be around you. It's the same reason that when you break up with someone and you're miserable, suddenly like no one's around, no one gives a shit about your problems because, people don't want to be surrounded by negativity. They want positivity, as fucked as it sounds. You might have a few genuine friends that will actually care and be there for you, but most people won't care. And you shouldn't hold that against them. It's just, they probably have their own shit to deal with and they just don't want to deal with your shit and be brought down further, as harsh as it sounds, but it's the truth. But anyway.
That's just how people are.
Yeah. As we draw things to a close for today, do you have any sort of final thoughts or upcoming projects you'd like to share with us?
Well, I feel like if I actually say, hey, this is what I'm working on now, then I'm gonna be locked in. I'm not gonna have a choice but do it. Like I'm gonna throw some stuff onto YouTube. I'm gonna start making nice stuff. I'm gonna start streaming again because there's things that I want to do. I'm gonna finish this fucking story, even if it kills me. I've been working on this thing for 2 years now, and honestly, it's been too long. I need to finish it. I've taken way too many breaks. There's only one break that is justified, and that's when my grandfather passed. The rest of them are just me being lazy. So I'm gonna stop doing that. I'm gonna finish it. I'm gonna try and get it published. I'm gonna fail at it, and I'm gonna write the next story. That's and I'm gonna get my degree this year. That's the plan of action for this year.
You'll do it, my friend. Absolutely. Like, best of luck to you. I really wish you the best. And I just want to say a massive thank you for appearing on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, you're always welcome on the show again. And I just want to say to the audience of the Christian Reeve podcast, if you're listening on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, wherever you listen to the Christian Reeve podcast, please leave us a rating. Please leave us some comments. Tell us if you like the show, if you dislike the show. I want to know your thoughts. If you're watching on YouTube, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Share the video, spread the word about the podcast. And yeah, let us know if you want to see particular guests on the show in the future. Let us know what topics you want to hear in the future. And yeah, just keep being awesome, be safe, be well. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. And until next time, peace out, one love. I'll see you in the next one.